Good morning, you guys. Good morning and welcome. Welcome to the First Cup. My name is Sonia McCullough Lockridge, and I joy to have my first cup of coffee with you. So, this morning, we are in chapter 9 of Dee's book, The Friendship of Women. The Friendship of Women. We're in chapter 9. We missed a day. So one day this week, we're going to have to cover two chapters so we can conclude this study on time. It's not a study, but this read on time. And so that means that, excuse me, my nose itches. That means that one day this week, we will cover 2 chapters and we will conclude our reading of Dee's book, The Friendship of Women. And I must admit, kind of become friends with Dee throughout the reading of this book. I didn't expect that, but she tells so many stories that you kind of begin to be on a first name basis with her. I mean, after all, I've been calling her Dee for a while now. So, in chapter 9, which is what I'm chatting about today, I'm a little distracted, I'm sorry. In chapter 9, which is what I'm chatting about today, we are looking at one of her biblical references, which is Genesis. She has several biblical references in this particular book, in this chapter, several. At least 6 to 8 references in chapter 9. Some of them are duplications from prior chapters, but it's her book, so we're just reading it and enjoying it. But yeah, several references. But the one that we're going to look at today in particular is Genesis 45, 1 through 8. Genesis 45, 1 through 8. She's still somewhat talking about the relationship between David and Jonathan. She's still somewhat sticking to that particular topic in chapter 9. And in addition to that, I have titled this particular video, Cultivating the Company of Women, Commitment, Covenant, and Codes. Or maybe Codes, Commitment, Covenant, and those 3 C words. You know, I'm on a C word thing these days. I am. I'm enjoying C words. Yes, I am. So, in this chapter, she talks about commitments, covenants, and codes in regards to friendships, and in particular, in regard to female friendships. And the root word of the word friendship means free. The root word of the key word friendship means free. So, that coffee is so good and piping hot. I'm telling you, it's tasty. It's a tasty cup. So, Genesis 45, 1 through 8 is one of her references in chapter 9. So we are just going to read it. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord to all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. So that is one of the biblical references that Dee shares in chapter 9 of the friendship of women. And her tie-in is the commitment that Joseph had to the life that he somehow knew the Lord was leading him to. So that is a commitment that Joseph had to this, his one life. So we may look at a few others that she has referenced in this particular chapter. One being Lamentations, maybe, possibly, I'm not really sure which ones I'm going to share. But overall, chapter 9 is a very meaty chapter. So we are moving on to Proverbs 19:22, which she shares in addition. Proverbs 19:22. In 19:22 reads as follows: what is desired is in a man is steadfast love, and a poor man is better than a liar. So Dee kind of she has titled chapter 9 Unfailing Love. Unfailing Love. And yeah, that's what she has titled chapter 9. And I'm not so sure I agree with her titling of chapter 9, because I personally do also agree in that commitment and covenant. Being content in commitment and covenant is love. That's just one of my personal beliefs and one of my personal policies for my life that I like to hold dear and hold near. So that is what we have for chapter 9 of the friendship of women. And like I said, we are moving on to conclude with this reading we'll conclude it on Friday. Overall, even though I have not read all 13 chapters, but I will read by Friday, I believe this book it's a pretty good book. It's a pretty good book. Outside of its tendencies to talk about things that I'm not comfortable talking about, it's a pretty good book. And like I said before, I believe that some things are just best left to the Word of God. And so I'm not overly comfortable with talking about certain topics. And so, like I said before on a prior video, when I worked with homeless women here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, I had a rule of thumb in which we did not talk about certain things. Because when you're with large groups of women, certain topics can become out of hand. And so, and this is reality. This is reality. This is just hard and fast reality. And I can speak from that reality because I experienced it. So I know when you get a group of varied, diverse women together, certain topics should not be discussed. And so that's why I developed my rule of thumb in which, I address it as we just don't address certain topics. And so when those topics are brought up, I just always say, if I can think of what it is, I always say, because I haven't been in a large group of diverse women like that in some time. And so I always just lean toward a best policy statement. So for this, my one life, I have some policies and procedures that I adhere to. And one of them is certain things that I'm just not willing to talk about. One of my policies and procedures is that I'm not one of those people that goes to the ATM. I don't venture to the ATM. I go to the bank. I do my banking inside. I do go around to the bank window, but I'm not an ATM type of person. So I'm not saying that I occasionally don't go to the ATM, because I do, but my best policy and procedure in place is that I do not go to the ATM. That's one of my policies and procedures. Another one of my policies and procedures is I don't do rip and run stores. If I'm going to go to the store, I just go to the store. I'll go to the dollar store. I'll go to Kroger. I'll go to Publix. I'll go to the Everything's a Dollar store, but I do not do rip and runs. So that's another policy and procedure I have in place for this, my one life. And I have several of those, and I don't, sometimes I will share them with people that I'm in the company of, so they have a better understanding of who it is I am. And so, yeah, I just shared with you two of my policies and procedures for my personal life, and that have been in place for, I would probably venture to say, my daughter is 26 years old. So I would venture to say that those policies and procedures have been in place for 27 years. And I have really enjoyed to have this first cup of coffee with you this morning. And my policy and procedure for a group of diverse women is that it keeps leaving me. I'm going to have to write it down so I can remember. Let's see, what is it that I would say to them? Celibacy is the best policy. Celibacy is the best policy. It really, really cuts down on people getting hurt on either side of the fence when people are experimenting with lifestyles. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. I will speak no more on the topic. This is Sonia signing out for the first cup. Have a blessed day in the Lord.